Here's Johnny.
Red rum! Red rum! Red rum!
Back in 1980, a horror film hit the theaters that looked like a simple story about a family trapped in a hotel during a harsh winter. But in reality, it was a journey sliding into madness and the breakdown of the human psyche. The Shining follows Jack Torrance, a father and a husband, who gradually loses control as he becomes isolated in the Overlook Hotel, a place that not only contains violent memories, but also distorts the mind and perception. But what many audiences miss is that this film is not just about ghosts and demons, but also delves deep into the most primal fear, the collapse from within. Stanley Kubrick built a world where space becomes unstable, time is bent, and every small detail can carry multiple layers of meaning. The endless hallways, the mirrors, the repeating sounds, all combine into a maze that viewers cannot escape using ordinary logic. But that's only the surface. Hidden behind every frame are symbols, metaphors, and truths that make the entire story far more complex than what you see the first time. So today, let's explore the 20 craziest facts about The Shining. Number 20. Every communication with ghosts seen in The Shining is tightly controlled around a single element: mirrors and reflections. And this is one of Stanley Kubrick's most sophisticated directorial details. Throughout the film, there is no important supernatural moment that appears directly without being accompanied by a reflective surface, creating an extremely consistent visual rule. Right from the scene where Danny writes the word "Red Room" on the door, the word is completely meaningless when viewed directly, but when seen through the mirror, it instantly turns into murder, showing that the core information is only decoded through reflection. Kubrick does not stop at a single detail. In the scene where Jack Torrance sits at the bar talking to the bartender Lloyd, the entire background frame is occupied by a large mirror reflecting both characters, creating a double composition where Jack always appears parallel to his own image. The camera is kept steady, with no quick cuts or sudden angle changes, forcing the viewer to accept the presence of the reflection as an inseparable part of the shot. By the time we reach the room 237 scene, Kubrick pushes this technique even further. The woman steps out of the bathtub with a perfect image, but only when Jack looks into the mirror does the reflection reveal a decayed body, creating two completely opposite image states existing in the same scene. Not only in the standout segments, many other scenes in the film also place characters in front of mirrors, glass, or reflective surfaces, especially when they face unusual events, from bedrooms to hallways, where the composition is often designed to create symmetry and doubling effects. The entities that appear in the film are never confirmed independently in physical space, but are always tied to or displayed through reflections. Number 19. Jack Torrance in The Shining may not be a character who is possessed in the usual way, but rather someone gradually reclaiming a role that already existed before. And this detail appears clearly through the way the film constructs dialogue and behavior. In the meeting with Grady, the line, "You've always been the caretaker," is presented as known information, not a threat or persuasion, but as a confirmation of Jack's position in the hotel system. Throughout the film, Jack does not go through a clear turning point from a normal state to losing control, but changes in a continuous process, with signs of stress, irritability, and impatience already appearing from the very first scenes. When the family arrives at the Overlook, Jack quickly integrates with the hotel's vast and isolated space, spending most of his time in public areas like the lobby and bar, where the conversations with other characters take place without any signs of surprise or panic. Jack's reactions in these situations feel more familiar than confrontational, with language and attitude gradually syncing with the surrounding environment. Some analyses suggest that the Overlook Hotel functions as a space that stores memories, where individuals once connected to it continue to exist in the form of repeated images or roles. In this structure, Jack is not placed in the position of a newcomer, but as a pre-existing part that is reactivated upon returning to the hotel. The time elements in the film are not presented in linear order, with the past and present coexisting in a single space. Jack's entire journey is not a transformation, but a process of returning to a position already established within the hotel's structure. Number 18. The architecture of the Overlook Hotel in The Shining is constructed in a way that completely breaks ordinary spatial logic. with many details showing clear contradictions when observed carefully in each scene. Ullman's office is a typical example, where a large window behind the desk lets in natural light even though the room's location is deep inside the building and cannot possibly have contact with the outside. When Danny rides his tricycle through the hallways, the sequence of spaces he moves through is pieced together from many different areas, with sudden changes in hallway width, floor materials, and lighting arrangements, creating a sense of continuity but making the overall structure impossible to determine. The hallways do not follow a consistent layout, with many turns leading to areas that cannot fit into a logical map. Some doors appear in positions that do not correspond to any room, while large areas like the main lobby and dining room do not match the hotel's exterior shape. Stanley Kubrick used many separate shots, then connected them in a way that disrupts continuity, making each time a character moves, create a new space that does not fully match the previous one. These changes are not emphasized through dialogue or plot, but exist directly in the visuals, forcing viewers to accept an unstable environment. When trying to imagine the hotel's layout, contradictory elements keep appearing, making positioning impossible. Number 17. The Shining is staged like a psychological experiment, where Stanley Kubrick directly controls how the audience perceives each frame through an extremely precisely calculated technical system. The film does not rely on sudden scares, but operates by stretching tension to an uncomfortable level through an unusually slow editing rhythm. Many shots are held much longer than standard, with no quick cuts and no release of pressure, forcing the viewer to remain in a prolonged state of anticipation. Sound is designed to disrupt perception, with low-frequency bands, drawn-out tones, and musical segments without clear melodies, creating a constant sense of unease. The sound does not signal anything about to happen, but exists as a layer of auditory pressure covering the entire shot. Repeating details like the sound of Danny's tricycle wheels changing between wood and carpet create a broken rhythm, keeping the viewer in a constant state of alertness. Camera angles are tightly controlled with smooth Steadicam movement, often tracking closely behind characters or at low level, creating the feeling of an invisible point of view watching the entire space. The frames are aligned almost perfectly symmetrical, with characters standing in the center and hallways stretching forward, creating a stable composition that nevertheless builds pressure as it extends over time. The slow rhythm, unstable sound, and controlled imagery make the viewing experience a continuous chain of stimuli, where the feeling of tension is maintained without needing clear climactic situations. Number 16. Tony in The Shining is not built as an ordinary imaginary friend, but appears with all the signs of a clearly structured separate personality. From his very first appearances, Tony does not speak in Danny's voice, but uses a deep, drawn-out voice with a completely different rhythm, creating a clear separation in expression. The way Danny raises his finger and lets Tony speak for him is not a random action, but is repeated many times in the exact same manner, showing a stable behavioral pattern. When Tony speaks, Danny's eyes become emptier, his face less expressive, and his reactions slower than in a normal state, creating a clear change between the two states of awareness. Tony usually appears at moments of stress or when Danny faces incomprehensible images, and it is Tony who provides information first, such as warning about room 237 or reacting to phenomena in the hotel. Instead of Danny directly expressing fear, Tony acts as an intermediary layer that processes information, separated from the main consciousness. This pattern fits the mechanism of a split personality, in which a second identity is formed to receive and handle experiences beyond the individual's capacity to endure. Throughout the film, Tony not only speaks but also controls how Danny reacts to the surrounding environment, from changing voice and behavior to the way information is received. Number 15. Room 237 in The Shining is staged as one of the most haunting segments, where the image transitions directly from attraction to decay within the same sequence of frames. When Jack enters the room, the shot immediately changes pace, the light becomes softer, the space is quiet, and the woman appears with a perfect appearance, smooth skin, slow movements, and a steady gaze. There is no immediate threat, everything is kept under control, making this appearance clearly attractive. Jack moves closer, makes direct contact, and the shot is held long enough to establish a sense of normalcy, before the change occurs. When the camera angle shifts to the mirror, the reflected image completely breaks the initial state, showing a decayed body with rotting skin, heavy movements, and image details kept clear within the frame. There are no quick cuts to avoid it, no blurring effects. The entire transformation process is shown continuously, held within a single composition. The two opposite states, perfect and decay, do not separate, but exist in parallel in the same scene through reflection, creating a direct visual contrast. Kubrick does not use sudden sound to shock, but lets the change happen in relative silence, forcing the viewer to follow every step of the transformation. The shot focuses entirely on the body, from skin surface and movement to texture changes, turning the initial image into a completely different physical state in just a few seconds. The combination of slow rhythm, stable composition, and clear image transition creates a strong sequence of opposites, in which attraction and decay appear consecutively in the same space with no distance between them. Number 14. The sound in The Shining is designed to create a feeling of direct physical discomfort for the viewer, even when there are no clearly scary images on screen. In many segments, the film uses extended low-frequency bands, background sounds without specific melodies, and overlapping layers of sound in an unstable way. These sounds are not used to illustrate action, but exist as a continuous layer of pressure covering the shot. The music segments by Wendy Carlos and Rachel Elkind use sustained chords, vibrating bass, and low frequencies that can directly affect the nervous system, raising the listener's heart rate and tension level without needing strong visual stimulation. In addition, the film exploits repeating sounds like the sound of Danny's tricycle wheels moving across wood and carpet floors, creating sudden changes in the audio rhythm, from smooth to rough and back to smooth, repeating continuously over long periods. This change does not follow a regular pattern, making the listener unable to predict and always in a state of alertness. Many scenes have no clear background music but still contain amplified environmental sounds, such as wind, echoes, or extended background tones, creating a sense of stretched space. These elements are combined to create an unstable sound system in which the viewer not only hears but also physically feels the pressure from the sound. Number 13. The colors in The Shining do not appear randomly, but are arranged as a psychological coding system throughout the entire film. Stanley Kubrick uses a color palette with extremely high control, in which each main color tone is tied to a specific state of the characters and space. Red appears densely in tense moments, from hallway carpets and room doors to the elevator overflowing with blood, creating a direct link to violence and danger. Blue and green are used in wide, cold, and low-detail spaces like hallways or large rooms, creating a feeling of isolation and separation. Yellow and orange often appear in living areas like the living room or bedrooms, but do not create a warm feeling. Instead, they carry an artificial and tense quality, with artificial lighting pushed strongly. In many scenes, these colors do not stand alone, but are placed next to each other in ways that create strong contrast, such as red on a green background or yellow on a dark background, highlighting conflict in the psychological state. Characters' clothing also follows this system, with Danny often wearing bright and standout colors, while Jack gradually shifts to darker and more neutral tones as his behavior changes. Areas in the hotel are also distinguished by their own colors, helping viewers identify space while simultaneously creating a sense of inconsistency when switching scenes. Number 12. Jack Torrance in The Shining is not a character who becomes dangerous when he enters the hotel, but already has signs of violence from the beginning, clearly shown through dialogue in the past mentioned in the film. In the job interview at the beginning, Jack talks about having once broken his son Danny's arm in a moment of losing control, and this detail is referenced as an event that happened before the family arrived at the Overlook. The way Jack recounts the incident does not come with strong emotional reaction, but is descriptive, showing the normalization of violent behavior. Right in the early scenes, the way Jack communicates with Wendy also shows discomfort and lack of patience, with interrupted speech and easily triggered reactions. When he starts working at the hotel, Jack quickly falls into a state of stress when unable to write, shown through repetitive behavior, sitting for hours in front of the typewriter, and negative reactions when disturbed. These changes do not appear suddenly but develop in a continuous line from pre-existing signs. When Jack begins talking to the characters in the hotel, his reactions do not show panic or resistance, but shift to a state of cooperation and acceptance, with a tone that becomes increasingly stable in tense situations. The later violent behaviors, including chasing Wendy and Danny, are carried out with focus and determination, not as short-term outbursts. Number 11. The twin girls in The Shining are not just a frightening image, but are built as a direct symbol of repetition and symmetry in the film's time structure. Instead of using two different characters, Stanley Kubrick chooses two identical images, from clothing and hairstyle to stance and expression, creating absolute symmetry in the frame. When Danny meets the two girls in the hallway, the composition is precisely aligned, with the two characters standing parallel, equal distance apart, and the camera placed head-on, highlighting the repetition in the image. The line, "Come and play with us, forever and ever," is repeated multiple times within the same sentence, extending the sound in a cyclical form, while reinforcing the idea of an action with no ending. The way the scene intercuts between images of the girls alive and images of them murdered also creates an overlap between two time states, where past and present exist simultaneously in the same space. The twin image appears as a repeating unit, unchanging, undeveloped, and never leaving its position in the hotel. The symmetry and staging, from standing position to movement and filming method, is maintained consistently, creating a closed visual structure. This directly links to the way the film handles time, where events do not occur in linear sequence but tend to repeat or return to previously existing states. Number 10. The ending of The Shining does not close the story, but opens a looping structure when the 1921 photograph places Jack Torrance in a time that exists before the entire main events. In the final frame, Jack clearly appears in a party at the Overlook Hotel with clothing and posture fitting the historical context, even though he had only just arrived at the hotel in the present. The photograph is not presented as a hidden detail, but is slowly zoomed in to highlight Jack's face in the center, turning it into direct evidence of his presence in the past. Throughout the film, time elements are not arranged in linear order, with many details showing that past and present coexist in the same space, such as meetings with Grady or appearances of characters from different time periods. The time markers on screen are displayed in the form of dates and hours, but do not clearly explain the transitions between periods, creating a feeling of stretched or repeating time. This structure places the entire story into a looping system, where characters can reappear at different times without following ordinary time rules. Number 9. The Overlook Hotel in The Shining is presented as a structure capable of reacting and self-adjusting rather than just a fixed setting. The interior space of the hotel continuously shows changes that cannot be explained by ordinary architectural logic, with hallways changing direction, doors leading to undefined areas, and rooms appearing or disappearing depending on the scene. These transitions are not announced in advance and have no consistency between appearances, so the same area can have different structures at different times. Areas like room 237, the bar, and the large lobby not only repeat in position, but also become central points where important events are triggered. When Jack appears at the bar, the empty space is immediately filled with Lloyd's presence, while previously there was no sign that this area was operating. Similarly, the meeting with Grady takes place in a bathroom space that keeps the same layout but completely changes in function and content. The lighting and sound in these scenes also change in sync, with brightness, colors, and background sound adjusted to match the character's state. The maze outside the hotel operates in a similar way, with repeating paths and difficult-to-determine directions, making movement uncontrollable. Number 8. The camera angles in The Shining are designed to create the feeling that there is always an invisible entity watching every movement of the characters, and this effect is built mainly through the systematic use of Steadicam. Instead of static angles or quick cuts, Stanley Kubrick uses long, smooth, and continuous shots that closely follow behind characters as they move through the hallways. The camera is often placed at a low level, especially in scenes where Danny rides his tricycle, creating a point of view that does not belong to any character in the film. The camera's movement is not shaky or jerky, but glides evenly at a steady speed, maintaining a fixed distance behind the character, like an entity following without ever getting closer or moving away. In many scenes, the camera not only follows, but also moves ahead, turning back toward the character advancing toward it, creating the feeling that the character is being led into the space ahead. These long shots have no clear cuts, giving the viewer no chance to escape from the maintained point of view. When combined with symmetrical composition and stretching hallways, the camera's movement further highlights the feeling of space being pulled deeper inward. The overall effect creates a state in which characters are always placed under observation, with the camera acting as a continuously existing point of view in the space that does not need to be explained. Number 7. Some characters in The Shining appear clearly in important scenes but have no confirmation of their existence outside Jack's point of view, raising the possibility that they do not exist as independent entities. Bartender Lloyd is the most prominent example, appearing when Jack sits alone in the empty bar, and immediately afterward the space is filled without any transition. No other character interacts with Lloyd, and there is no direct evidence showing that he exists outside the conversation with Jack. Similarly, Grady the hotel's former manager appears in the bathroom and talks to Jack about events that happened, but his account has contradictions with previous information, especially regarding identity and family. The dialogues take place in tightly controlled spaces, with symmetrical composition and stable lighting, creating a feeling of separation from the rest of the hotel. This construction places the characters in an undefined state of existence, where they only appear at specific moments and have no connection to the main character system. Number 6. Red Wem in The Shining is not simply the word murder written backward, but is built as a multi-layered detail with deliberate presentation in image and sound. When Danny first utters this word, it appears as a sequence of disjointed sounds without clear meaning, repeated many times with a slow and drawn-out rhythm, creating an unusual feeling right from the pronunciation. The word is not explained directly, but is kept in an incomprehensible state until it appears on the door and is seen through the mirror, where the letter structure is reversed and turns into murder. Murderum therefore exists in two simultaneous forms, a meaningless sound form when heard directly, and a specific message form when viewed through the mirror. This transition does not happen immediately, but is built through multiple repetitions, with each appearance maintaining the same sound structure, reinforcing the word's presence in the viewer's awareness. Throughout the film, Red Rum does not appear only as a single word, but is tied to Danny's state, especially when Tony speaks for him with a deep voice and slow rhythm, creating a clear difference from normal speech. This presentation places Red Rum in the position of a warning signal, appearing before violent events without needing direct explanation. Number 5. The Shining contains many details related to Native American culture, placed throughout the set design and dialogue, forming a layer of metaphor about hidden violent history. In the opening interview, the hotel manager mentions that the Overlook was built on land that was once a Native American burial ground, and construction workers had to face attacks during the building process. This detail is not repeated many times, but is placed at the opening position as background information for the entire space. Inside the hotel, decorative motifs strongly featuring Native American style appear continuously, from hallway carpets and wall paintings to patterns on furniture. These geometric patterns, strong contrasting colors, and repeating symbols form a visual system tied to indigenous culture. Some areas in the hotel, especially the Colorado Lounge, use designs directly inspired by traditional Native American art, with sharp lines and symmetrical layouts. The combination of dialogue about the land's origin and the decorative elements creates a link between the hotel's present space and the location's previous history. The violent events in the film take place in this very space, where Native American cultural elements are maintained as part of the design, creating an overlap between past and present in the same environment. Number 4. The Shining is built with such a dense concentration of hidden details that every frame contains elements that can be missed if not observed carefully. The patterns on carpets, walls, and floors are not just for decoration, but are repeated according to specific geometric structures, creating patterns with high symmetry that appear many times in different spaces. One of the clearest examples is the hallway carpet, with connecting hexagons, appearing in many scenes of Danny moving. creating a repeating background image that can be recognized immediately. Numbers are also used intentionally, especially room number 237, appearing many times in dialogue and action, becoming a recurring highlight throughout the film. In addition, small details like object positions, wall paintings, and interior arrangements often change slightly between scenes, even in the same space, creating inconsistency that can be noticed when comparing frames. Stanley Kubrick uses precise staging, with each object placed in a specific position in the frame, with no detail appearing randomly. The frames are often aligned symmetrically, with a clear center line, making every small change in composition easy to notice when repeated. The combination of patterns, numbers, and composition creates a connected visual system in which every small element can carry its own information. This organization makes the film function as a multi-layered structure, where details are distributed throughout the entire runtime, creating a network of information stretching from beginning to end. Number 3. The elevator overflowing with blood scene in The Shining appears many times throughout the film, but is not directly tied to any specific event in the plot, and is built as a symbolic image rather than an action with a clear cause. The shot is staged with 2 elevator doors opening and a large amount of red liquid pouring out into the hallway in slow motion, with no characters appearing and no shocking sound accompanying it. The blood does not originate from a specific violent action in the present moment, but appears as an independent image, separate from the main event sequence. This image is repeated many times, keeping the same composition and movement, forming a visual motif throughout the film. There is no dialogue explaining the origin of this amount of blood, and no character directly witnesses it in the same way the audience sees it. Repeating the same image with an unchanged structure creates a link to the violent events mentioned in the hotel's past, including the murders that occurred before the Torrance family arrived. Blood pouring from the elevator, a confined and central space, spreads out into the hallway, covering the entire frame, creating an image not limited to a specific position. This presentation does not aim to describe a specific action, but to express a state in which violent elements are not confined to a defined time or space. Number 2. The Shining is built in a way that every explanatory hypothesis can be reasonable, but no hypothesis can fully cover the entire film. The film's details continuously create contradictions when placed next to each other, from time structure and space to character behavior. Some elements suggest supernatural phenomena, such as the appearance of characters from the past or unexplainable images, while other elements can be interpreted psychologically, such as Jack's instability or Danny's state of perception. Details about the hotel's architecture are inconsistent with reality, but are also not explained as a clear supernatural phenomenon. The dialogues between Jack and other characters contain contradictory information about identity and events, creating many different interpretations without a final confirmation. Stanley Kubrick does not provide a direct solution in any part of the film, and the visual, sound, and dialogue elements are all arranged in an open way, allowing multiple interpretations to exist in parallel. Popular hypotheses, from time loops and split personalities to historical metaphors, are all based on real details in the film, but none explain all the contradictions without overlooking some information. This structure creates a system in which each layer of information can lead to a different understanding, and there is no mechanism in the film that confirms a single interpretation. Number 1. The Shining is built according to a structure that does not follow ordinary storytelling logic, making many viewers feel confused when trying to connect events in a reasonable sequence. The film does not provide a clear cause and effect thread, but instead arranges scenes in a way that creates a disjointed feeling while still linking them through visuals and sound. Time markers are displayed with dates and hours, but do not explain the transitions between periods, making the timeline unstable. The space in the hotel changes structure without a clear reason. Characters appear and disappear without introduction or conclusion, and many events are not explained through dialogue. This arrangement creates a sequence of images similar to the way a dream operates, in which elements can transform without following physical or storytelling logic rules. Scenes can begin and end without preparation, and details can repeat in variant forms without direct explanation. Stanley Kubrick maintains this staging method throughout the film, with slow rhythm, stable camera angles, and extended sound, creating a continuous state of reception rather than clear high points. And those are the 20 craziest, most unique, and most haunting facts about The Shining. But what truly makes this film different is not in each individual detail, but in the way all of them are connected into a tight and deeply meaningful structure. From the use of mirrors, sound, and colors, to the way space and time are distorted. Everything is controlled with near absolute precision by Stanley Kubrick. No detail is random, and no interpretation is completely sufficient. Each time you watch it again, viewers can discover new layers of meaning and details they had never noticed before. That is why, after more than 40 years, the film continues to be analyzed and debated from countless different perspectives. And perhaps it is precisely the absence of a clear solution that has turned The Shining into an endless experience, where each viewer must find their own way to understand it. If you like movie secrets like this, don't forget to hit subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. Thank you for watching, and see you again in even darker stories ahead.